Welcome back everyone to Legendary Films. Today we're diving into the complete story of House of the Dragon Seasons 1 and 2 before Season 3 arrives. Before the Dance of the Dragons, before the Greens and the Blacks, and before House Targaryen began tearing itself apart, everything started with a single decision. Nearly 200 years before the events of Game of Thrones, House Targaryen stood at the height of its power. They possessed more dragons than ever before. Their rule stretched across all of Westeros, and no family in the world appeared stronger. At this time, the Seven Kingdoms were ruled by King Jaehaerys Targaryen, a ruler so respected that history would remember him as Jaehaerys the Conciliator. For decades, he had brought peace, stability, and prosperity to the realm. But as he grew older, a problem began threatening everything he had built. Succession. One by one, tragedy struck House Targaryen. The king's sons died before him, his heirs disappeared, and eventually nobody knew who should inherit the Iron Throne after his death. Fearing that the kingdom might descend into civil war, King Jaehaerys called for a great council at Harrenhal. Lords from every corner of Westeros gathered to decide who would become the next ruler. Among the strongest claimants was Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, the granddaughter of King Jaehaerys. Many believe she had the strongest claim by blood. But there was another candidate, Prince Viserys Targaryen, a male descendant of the king. For days, the lords debated. Arguments filled the halls of Harrenhal. Powerful houses chose sides, and the future of the Seven Kingdoms hung in the balance. Finally, a decision was reached. The Great Council chose Viserys Targaryen. A male heir had been chosen over a female claimant. That single decision would eventually change the fate of Westeros forever. Years later, King Jaehaerys dies. Viserys ascends the Iron Throne. The realm celebrates. The new king is kind, generous, and peaceful. Unlike many rulers before him, Viserys doesn't crave war or conquest. He simply wants his family to remain united and his kingdom to prosper. Unfortunately, fate has other plans. 9 years into his reign, Queen Aemma Arryn is pregnant once again. For years, the royal family has struggled to produce a healthy male heir. Many pregnancies have ended in tragedy. Many children have been lost. This child represents hope. Hope for the future, hope for stability, and hope for a clear line of succession. King Viserys becomes convinced that this baby will finally be the son he has always wanted. Meanwhile, preparations are underway for a grand tournament celebrating the birth of the expected prince. As knights compete before thousands of spectators, Queen Aemma goes into labor inside the Red Keep. At first, everyone expects a joyful celebration. Instead, disaster strikes. The labor becomes increasingly dangerous. Hours pass. The baby refuses to come. The queen grows weaker with every moment. Eventually, the maesters deliver devastating news. If nothing is done, both mother and child will die. Viserys is forced to make an impossible choice. Attempt a dangerous procedure that might save the baby, or lose them both. Terrified and desperate, Viserys chooses the procedure. Queen Aemma never agrees to it. She barely understands what's happening before the maesters begin. Moments later, Queen Aemma dies. The baby survives briefly. A son, the heir Viserys had dreamed about for years. But the celebration never comes. The child dies shortly afterward. In a single day, Viserys loses both his wife and his son. And once again, the Iron Throne has no clear male heir. Attention immediately turns towards Prince Daemon Targaryen, the king's younger brother. Daemon is one of the most feared men in Westeros. He rides the dragon Caraxes, commands the City Watch, and possesses skills as a warrior that few can match. But Daemon is also reckless, impulsive, and impossible to control. Many nobles believe placing Daemon on the throne would be disastrous. Others believe he is exactly the strong ruler the kingdom needs. Shortly after the death of the infant prince, Daemon attends a gathering in a brothel. During the celebration, he reportedly refers to the dead child as the heir for a day. The words quickly reached King Viserys. Whether Daemon truly meant them as cruel mockery or not no longer matters. The king is furious. For years, Viserys has tolerated his brother's behavior. This time is different. Daemon is stripped of his position as heir. And then, Viserys does something nobody expects. He names Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen as the official heir to the Iron Throne. The announcement shocks the realm. Never before has a woman been publicly chosen to inherit the Seven Kingdoms. Lords from across Westeros certainly are called to court. One by one, they kneel before Rhaenyra. One by one, they swear loyalty. And one by one, they promise to defend her claim. Among those kneeling is Lord Corlys Velaryon, known throughout the realm as the Sea Snake, the richest sailor in Westeros, and one of the most powerful men alive. Standing beside him is his wife, Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, the very woman who had once been passed over during the Great Council. At this time, Rhaenyra's closest friend is Alicent Hightower, the daughter of Otto Hightower, the King's Hand. The two girls spend nearly every day together. They share secrets, laugh together, and trust each other completely. But their friendship is living on borrowed time. After Queen Aemma's death, King Viserys struggles with grief. He spends long hours alone, avoids celebrations, and slowly withdraws from everyone around him. Otto Hightower notices this, and he sees an opportunity. Quietly, he instructs Alicent to visit the king, to comfort him, to listen when he speaks, and to be there whenever he needs company. Alicent obeys her father. At first, she simply reads to the king and keeps her company, but over time, Viserys begins enjoying her presence. Months pass, their bond grows stronger, and eventually the king must make another important decision. Many people expect him to marry Laena Velaryon, the young daughter of Corlys and Rhaenys. The marriage would strengthen two powerful Velaryon families and strengthen the royal line. Instead, Viserys surprises everyone. He announces that he will marry Alicent Hightower. The decision stuns the entire court. Lord Corlys feels insulted. His family has been rejected again. But nobody is hurt more than Rhaenyra. Her best friend is becoming her stepmother, and neither Alicent nor her father told her beforehand. For the first time, a crack forms between them, a crack that will continue growing for years. Meanwhile, Prince Daemon has no intention of disappearing quietly. After being pushed away from King's Landing once again, Prince Daemon turns his attention toward the Stepstones, a chain of islands located between Westeros and Essos. For years, pirates and raiders have been attacking merchant ships passing through the region. At the center of the conflict is a mysterious and terrifying man known as the Crab Feeder. His real name is Creghas Vrahar. Whenever he captures enemies, he ties them to the shore and leaves them to be slowly eaten alive by crabs. The attacks are devastating trade throughout the Narrow Sea. No one feels the impact more than Lord Corlys Velaryon. His wealth depends on shipping routes, and every day the crab feeder remains alive, House Velaryon loses money and influence. Corlys repeatedly asks King Viserys for help, but Viserys refuses to start a major war. The king wants peace. He always wants peace, even when peace is no longer possible. Frustrated by the king's inaction, Corlys forms an alliance with Daemon. Together, they launch their own campaign against the crab feeder. The war drags on for years. Neither side can achieve a decisive victory. The enemy hides inside caves whenever dragons attack, and the difficult terrain prevents Daemon's forces from finishing the job. Eventually, Daemon grows tired of waiting. He realizes the war will never end unless he forces the enemy into the open. So he comes up with a dangerous plan. Alone, he walks onto the battlefield carrying a white flag. At first, it appears he is surrendering. The crab feeder's men leave their caves and move toward him. Then suddenly, Daemon attacks. Arrows begin flying, soldiers rush forward, the battlefield erupts into chaos. Even though Daemon is badly outnumbered, he continues fighting. His goal isn't victory. His goal is to lure the enemy out of hiding. And it works. The moment the enemy fully commits to the attack, dragons appear in the sky. Lord Corlys and his forces launch a massive assault. The battle quickly turns into a slaughter. As the fighting continues, Daemon hunts down the crab feeder personally. The two disappear into a cave. Moments later, Daemon emerges covered in blood, dragging half of the crab feeder behind him. The war is finally over, and Daemon returns to Westeros as a hero. Back in King's Landing, several years have passed. Queen Alicent has now given birth to multiple children: Prince Aegon, Prince Aemond, and Princess Helaena. For many lords, Aegon should be the obvious heir. He's the king's firstborn son, exactly the kind of successor Westerosi tradition favors. But King Viserys refuses to change his decision. Rhaenyra remains heir, no matter what anyone says. This decision creates growing tension between Alicent and Rhaenyra, especially after Rhaenyra gives birth to children of her own. Her first son is named Jacaerys, then comes Lucerys, then Joffrey. Officially, all three boys are sons of Laenor Balerion. But almost nobody believes that. The boys have brown hair, brown eyes, and very little resemblance to either Rhaenyra or Laenor. Instead, many people notice they look remarkably similar to Sir Harwin Strong. Harwin is one of the strongest knights in Westeros, and he spends an awful lot of time around the princess. Nobody openly accuses Rhaenyra of anything. Doing so would be extremely dangerous. But the rumors spread throughout the kingdom. Every noble house talks about it. Every servant talks about it. And eventually, even Alicent's children begin repeating those rumors. For Alicent, this becomes proof that Rhaenyra cannot be trusted. She believes the future queen is breaking the rules while expecting everyone else to accept it. Meanwhile, King Viserys continues defending his daughter, no matter how obvious the rumors appear, no matter how much evidence people think they see. The king refuses to acknowledge it, because doing so would destroy everything. One day, tensions finally explode during a training session involving the royal children. An argument breaks out. Harwin Strong rushes to protect Rhaenyra's sons, and in doing so, accidentally confirms many of the rumors people have been whispering for years. The incident attracts unwanted attention. Soon afterward, Harwin leaves King's Landing alongside his father, Lord Lionel Strong. Unfortunately, neither man ever reaches safety. One night, a fire breaks out inside Harrenhal, the massive castle belonging to House Strong. The flames spread rapidly, and both Harwin and Lionel become trapped inside. Neither survived. Officially, everyone calls it a tragic accident. But some people suspect something much darker happened, because another member of House Strong benefits greatly from their deaths: Larys Strong. Unlike his brother Harwin, Larys rarely uses force. His weapon is information, secrets, manipulation, and patience. After the deaths of his father and brother, Larys becomes Lord of Harrenhal, exactly what he wanted. From that moment forward, he begins attaching himself closely to Queen Alicent, becoming one of her most valuable allies and one of the most dangerous men in Westeros. Far away from King's Landing, Daemon has also started a new chapter of his life. After years of conflict and exile, eventually he marries Laena Velaryon, the daughter of Corlys and Rhaenys. Together, they travel across Essos, ride dragons, and raise a family. For the first time in a very long while, Daemon appears genuinely happy. But happiness never lasts long in House Targaryen. One day, Laena experiences a difficult pregnancy. Complications quickly appear, and she realizes she is unlikely to survive. Refusing to suffer a slow death, she makes her own choice. She walks toward her dragon, Vhagar, the oldest, largest, and most powerful dragon alive. Looking directly at her dragon, Laena gives a final command: Dracarys. Vhagar hesitates, almost as if she understands. Then, dragon fire erupts, and Laena dies on her own terms. As the funeral for Laena Velaryon comes to an end, grief hangs heavily over Driftmark. Members of House Targaryen and House Velaryon gather to pay their respects, but beneath the sadness, old rivalries continue growing. Among those attending is Prince Aemon Targaryen. For years, Aemon has been mocked because he doesn't have a dragon. His brother laughs at him, his nephews laugh at him, even some members of his own family treat him as an outsider. But tonight, everything changes. Late at night, while everyone else sleeps, Aemon sneaks away from the castle. His destination is Vhagar, the dragon that once belonged to Laena. Vhagar is not just any dragon. She is the largest living dragon in the world, older than most people can imagine, a creature powerful enough to destroy entire armies. Approaching her alone is practically suicide. One wrong move could mean death. But Aemon refuses to back down. He steps forward, speaks the commands, and somehow, Vhagar accepts him. Moments later, Aemon finds himself soaring through the night sky on the most powerful dragon alive. The dream he has carried for years finally becomes reality. For the first time in his life, nobody can call him weak. Nobody can laugh at him anymore. Unfortunately, his victory doesn't last long. When he returns, Daemon's daughters discover what happened. They believe Vhagar should have remained with their family. A confrontation begins. Soon, Rhaenyra's sons join the argument. Insults are exchanged, tempers rise, and within moments, a fight breaks out. Aemon quickly gains the upper hand. He's older, stronger, and years of frustration are pouring out of him. Then, he says something that changes everything. He calls Jacaerys and Lucerys bastards. The fight becomes even more violent. Weapons are drawn, and in the chaos, Lucerys slashes Aemon across the face with a knife. When everything finally stops, Aemon has lost his left eye. The entire family rushes to the scene. Blood covers the floor. Children are crying, adults are screaming, and King Viserys is forced to investigate. Instead of focusing on Aemon's injury, Viserys becomes obsessed with one question. Who told him the boys were bastards? Because that accusation threatens the legitimacy of Rhaenyra's entire claim. Alicent is horrified. Her son has permanently lost an eye, yet nobody seems concerned about his suffering. For years, she has watched people protect Rhaenyra, excuse Rhaenyra, defend Rhaenyra. And finally, she snaps. Alicent demands that one of Lucerys' eyes be removed as punishment. Viserys refuses. Furious, Alicent grabs the king's Valyrian steel dagger and attacks Rhaenyra herself. The room erupts into chaos. People rush forward, shouting fills the hall, and during the struggle, Alicent cuts Rhaenyra's arm. For a brief moment, it looks as though the royal family is about to destroy itself right there. Eventually, the fighting stops, but everyone understands something important. There is no repairing this family anymore. That same night, another major event takes place. Rhaenyra and Daemon finally admit what has been obvious for years. They want each other. The connection between them has survived every scandal, every separation, and every political conflict. Now, both of them are widowed and neither sees a reason to wait any longer. But one problem remains: Laenor Velaryon. Officially, he is still Rhaenyra's husband. Not long afterward, shocking news spreads throughout Driftmark. Lord Corlys Velaryon is seriously injured, and people begin debating who should inherit his seat if he dies. Corlys' younger brother Vaemond believes he should become Lord of Driftmark, but Rhaenyra argues that Lucerys should inherit according to the existing succession plan. The issue eventually reaches King's Landing, and despite being incredibly weak, Viserys makes one final appearance in the throne room. Supported by his family, the king slowly walks towards the Iron Throne. Every step is painful, every movement is difficult, yet he refuses to stay away. When Viserys finally reaches the throne, everyone understands they're witnessing the last strength of a dying king. He rules in favor of Lucerys, protecting Rhaenyra's claim once again. Furious, Vaemond publicly accuses Rhaenyra's sons of being bastards. Then he insults Daemon. That turns out to be a terrible mistake. Without hesitation, Daemon draws Dark's sister and slices off Vaemon's head. The room falls silent. And somehow, the matter is considered settled. That night, Viserys gathers his family for one final dinner. For a brief moment, it feels like the old days. People laugh, smile, and even exchange kind words. Viserys looks around the room and sees his family together, exactly what he always wanted. For one beautiful moment, peace seemed possible. Not long after the family dinner, King Viserys lies dying in his chambers. For years, disease has slowly destroyed his body. The man who once ruled the Seven Kingdoms now struggles to breathe. Yet even in his final moments, Viserys is still thinking about the future, still thinking about the prophecy passed down through House Targaryen. The prophecy that speaks of a terrible threat coming from the north, a threat that one day will require a united realm to survive. Believing he is speaking to Rhaenyra, Viserys begins talking to Aegon the Conqueror's dream, about the prince that was promised, about the responsibility that must pass from ruler to ruler. But Rhaenyra isn't there. The person sitting beside him is Alicent. Weak and confused, Viserys mentions Aegon. He mentions the prophecy, and Alicent misunderstands everything. She believes the king is naming their son Aegon as his successor. Moments later, King Viserys Targaryen dies. The king who spent his entire life trying to prevent war is gone, and with him goes the last thing holding his family together. The moment Viserys dies, the struggle for the throne begins. Rather than informing Rhaenyra immediately, Alicent and her allies secretly meet in the small council. To Alicent's surprise, several council members have already been preparing for this moment. For years, plans have been created, alliances have been secured, and strategies have been discussed. Many powerful nobles never intended to allow Rhaenyra to become queen, no matter what Viserys wanted. The Green Council officially begins. Some members support crowning Aegon immediately. Others hesitate. Lord Beesbury openly objects. He insists that Rhaenyra is the rightful heir. Unfortunately, speaking against the Greens proves fatal. Sir Criston Cole loses his temper, and Lord Beesbury dies during the confrontation. The first death of the coming war has already occurred, and the war hasn't officially started yet. The next problem is obvious. Nobody knows where Prince Aegon is. The future king has disappeared. Search parties spread throughout King's Landing. Both Otto Hightower and Alicent desperately want to find him first, because each has different plans for how the new king should rule. Eventually, Aegon is located, and he is not excited about becoming king. Unlike many ambitious princes, Aegon never truly wanted the throne. He knows his weaknesses, he knows his flaws, and deep down, he understands that ruling will change everything. But events are already moving beyond his control. Soon afterward, preparations begin for a coronation. Long before that happens, meanwhile, on Dragonstone, Rhaenyra knows nothing about what is happening. She is heavily pregnant, surrounded by her family, and still believes she has time. Then, terrible news arrives. King Viserys is dead. The shock nearly destroys her. The stress sends Rhaenyra into labor, and the childbirth becomes a nightmare. After immense suffering, the child is stillborn. Rhaenyra loses her daughter before she even has time to mourn her father. The grief is overwhelming, but there is no time to collapse. The kingdom is already choosing sides. Back in King's Landing, Aegon's coronation takes place inside the Dragon Pit. Thousands gather to witness the event. The crown of Aegon the Conqueror is placed upon his head. Blackfire is handed to him, and the crowd begins cheering. For the first time, Aegon seems to embrace his new role. But the celebration is interrupted. Suddenly, the floor of the Dragon Pit explodes. Stone shatters, dust fills the air, and a dragon bursts upward through the ground. The dragon is Meleys, ridden by Princess Rhaenys Targaryen. Panic spreads throughout the crowd. People scream, run, and die beneath the chaos. For a brief moment, Rhaenys has the entire Green faction trapped before her. Aegon, Alicent, Aemond, Criston Cole, all of them. One command, one word, and she could end the war before it begins. But she doesn't. Instead, she turns Meleys around and flies away. When Rhaenys reaches Dragonstone, she delivers the news personally. The Greens have crowned Aegon. War is no longer a possibility. War is now inevitable. Even then, Rhaenyra hesitates. She remembers her father's wishes. She remembers the prophecy, and she understands how many lives could be lost. Unlike many rulers, Rhaenyra doesn't rush into battle. She wants peace if peace is still possible. Unfortunately, events are already spiraling out of control. To strengthen her claim, Rhaenyra sends her sons as messengers. Jacaerys flies north. Lucerys travels to Storm's End. The mission seems simple: secure support from powerful lords, return safely. But fate has other plans. When Lucerys arrives at Storm's End, he discovers he's not alone. Aemond is already there. And unlike Lucerys, Aemond has arrived with Vhagar, the largest dragon in the world. Years may have passed since Driftmark, but Aemond has never forgotten losing his eye, never forgiven, and never moved on. The tension inside the castle becomes unbearable. Fortunately, Lord Boros Baratheon refuses to allow violence under his roof. Lucerys is allowed to leave, but Aemond isn't finished. A massive storm rages across the skies. Lightning flashes, thunder shakes the clouds, and Lucerys desperately guides his young dragon Arax through the darkness. Then Vhagar appears. The ancient dragon emerges from the storm like a living mountain. Aemond begins chasing Lucerys through the clouds. At first, he treats it like a game, a chance to terrify the boy who took his eye. But dragons are not toys. Dragons do not always obey. Arax panics and attacks Vhagar. Aemond immediately realizes things have gone too far. He tries to regain control. He tries to stop Vhagar. But it's already too late. The ancient dragon ignores his commands. With one devastating attack, Vhagar tears Arax apart. Lucerys dies. His dragon dies, and pieces of both disappear into the storm below. For the first time, Aemond truly understands what he has done. He never meant to start a war, but that's exactly what he has done. When the news reaches Dragonstone, Rhaenyra is devastated. For days, she barely speaks. The grief is overwhelming. But eventually, grief turns into anger, and anger turns into determination. Meanwhile, Daemon reacts very differently. Unlike Rhaenyra, he has no interest in negotiations, no interest in diplomacy, and certainly no interest in forgiveness. In his eyes, the Greens have murdered a prince, and blood must be answered with blood. Without Rhaenyra's knowledge, Daemon secretly begins planning revenge. His target is simple. If Aemond killed a son, then Alicent's family should lose one as well. To carry out the plan, Daemon hires two men. One is a former member of the City Watch, known as Blood. The other is a rat catcher working inside the Red Keep, known as Cheese. Together, they sneak into King's Landing, then into the royal castle itself. Eventually, they find Queen Helaena, Aegon's wife, and her children. The two intruders corner her, then present a horrifying choice. Choose which son dies, or watch them both die. Terrified and desperate, Helaena points toward Prince Maelor, hoping the attackers will spare the other child. Instead, the killers murder Prince Jaehaerys, Aegon's heir. Then they escape into the darkness. The murder sends shockwaves throughout Westeros. Even many supporters of Rhaenyra are horrified. This isn't war, it's butchery. And the tragedy completely destroys Helaena emotionally. She becomes withdrawn, traumatized, and increasingly disconnected from the world around her. For Aegon, the murder is personal. His son is dead, his heir is gone, and his rage becomes uncontrollable. Meanwhile, Daemon leaves Dragonstone and travels to Harrenhal, one of the largest castles in Westeros. The ancient fortress has a dark reputation. Generations of violence, death, and tragedy seem to linger within its walls. Daemon captures the castle with surprisingly little resistance, but once inside, strange things begin happening. The longer Daemon remains at Harrenhal, the more he seems haunted by memories, by regrets, and by ghosts from his past. Sometimes he sees people who aren't there. Sometimes he relives old failures. And sometimes he questions decisions he once believed were correct. Perhaps for the first time in his life, Daemon is forced to confront himself. While Daemon struggles at Harrenhal, the war continues spreading across the realm. More houses choose sides, more armies begin marching, and dragons become increasingly important. Because whoever controls the dragons controls the battlefield. One of the most important figures supporting Rhaenyra remains Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, the queen who never was. For years, she has watched others sit upon thrones she might have inherited herself, yet despite everything, she remains loyal to Rhaenyra. Soon word arrives that Criston Cole is marching with a green army. Their objective is clear: expand Aegon's control over the realm. To stop them, Rhaenyra sends Rhaenys, mounted on her dragon Meleys. At first, the mission seems straightforward, but it is actually a trap. Near Rook's Rest, the Greens revealed their true plan. Hidden nearby is Aemond, riding Vhagar. And surprisingly, King Aegon himself also arrives, mounted on Sunfire. The battlefield suddenly becomes one of the largest dragon fights Westeros has ever seen. Meleys attacks, Sunfire attacks, Vhagar joins the battle, and chaos erupts in the skies. Despite being outnumbered, Rhaenys refuses to retreat. She continues fighting, again and again, determined to damage the enemy as much as possible. Then, disaster strikes. Vhagar crashes into the battle. The ancient dragon's enormous size gives her a huge advantage. The fighting becomes uncontrollable. At one point, Aemon sees an opportunity, and instead of protecting his brother, he takes it. Vhagar attacks. The attack severely injures both Sunfire and King Aegon. Whether Aemond intended to kill his brother remains unclear, but one thing becomes obvious. Aemond is perfectly willing to let Aegon die if it benefits him. Moments later, Meleys is overwhelmed. Rhaenys and her dragon are killed. The battle technically ends as a green victory, but the cost is enormous. Aegon survives, barely. His body is horribly burned, his bones shattered, and he is left unable to rule effectively. For the first time since the war began, real power starts shifting towards Aemond, the prince with one eye, the rider of Vhagar, the man many people secretly fear more than the king himself. As Aegon lies helpless in bed, Aemond begins taking control, and unlike Viserys, unlike Rhaenyra, unlike many others, Aemond is not interested in compromise. On Dragonstone, Rhaenyra faces a growing problem. She still possesses dragons, many dragons, but she doesn't have enough experienced riders to use them. Several powerful dragons remain riderless: Vermithor, Silverwing, Seasmoke, and others. Rhaenyra realizes these dragons could change the entire war. The problem is finding people brave enough to claim them. Most people who try to bond with a dragon end up dead, burned alive, torn apart, or eaten. But the risk is worth it because whoever controls more dragons controls the future of the war. As word spreads, people with Targaryen ancestry begin arriving on Dragonstone. Many are distant descendants of old Valyrian bloodlines. Others simply hope luck is on their side. These volunteers become known as the Dragon Seeds. Among them are two men who couldn't be more different: Hugh Hammer and Ulf White. Hugh is a blacksmith, strong, proud, and increasingly frustrated with the suffering caused by the war. Ulf is a drunk, a storyteller, and a man who enjoys exaggerating his importance. Neither looks like a hero, neither looks like a dragon rider, yet both are about to change history. The first attempts end in disaster. Several dragon seeds approach the dragons, several die. Dragon fire fills the air, screams echo across Dragonstone, and many begin questioning whether this plan is madness. Then everything changes. Hugh approaches Vermithor. Once ridden by King Jaehaerys himself, Vermithor is one of the largest dragons alive,
a monster capable of destroying entire armies. For a moment, it looks like Hugh will die like the others, but instead, Vermithor accepts him. A new dragon rider is born. Soon afterward, Ulf White successfully claims Silverwing. Another powerful dragon joins Rhaenyra's side. The balance of power begins shifting. Meanwhile, another surprising event unfolds. For years, everyone believed Seasmoke had lost his rider forever. After Laenor Valarion's disappearance, the dragon remained alone, restless, almost searching for something. Then, Seasmoke suddenly chooses a new rider, Adam of Hull, a young sailor with Valyrian blood. The bond surprises nearly everyone, but once it happens, nobody can deny the truth. Seasmoke has made his choice. Adam quickly proves himself capable and becomes one of Rhaenyra's most valuable new allies. While these developments strengthen the Blacks, trouble grows elsewhere. King Aegon remains badly injured after Rook's Rest. His burns are severe, his body is broken, and many people doubt he will ever fully recover. As a result, real authority begins shifting toward Aemond. For years, Aemond lived in the shadow of his brother. Now that shadow is gone, and he wastes no time using his new power. Unlike Aegon, Aemond is disciplined, focused, and ruthless. He believes the war can only end through overwhelming force. Peace negotiations mean nothing to him. Mercy means nothing to him. Victory is all that matters. As Aemond gains influence, his relationship with Criston Cole also changes. Together, they begin planning increasingly aggressive campaigns. Castles are attacked, armies move across the countryside, and fear spreads wherever Vhagar appears, because everyone understands one thing. No dragon alive is more dangerous than Vhagar. The ancient beast has become the ultimate weapon, and Aemond controls her. Meanwhile, Daemon continues struggling at Harrenhal. At first, he expected a military campaign. Instead, he finds himself trapped inside a castle full of ghosts. Night after night, strange visions haunt Daemon. Sometimes he sees young Rhaenyra, sometimes Viserys, sometimes people long dead. The line between reality and imagination becomes increasingly difficult to recognize. Daemon begins questioning choices he never questioned before. His ambitions, his failures, his relationships, especially his relationship with Viserys. For years, Daemon convinced himself that Viserys never understood him, never trusted him, never appreciated him. But inside Harrenhal, he starts confronting painful truths about himself. Perhaps Viserys understood him better than anyone else, and perhaps many of Daemon's problems were his own fault. Back on Dragonstone, Rhaenyra finally begins seeing results from her Dragon Seed strategy. New dragon riders strengthen her position dramatically. For the first time in months, genuine hope begins returning to her supporters. Yet success creates new dangers, because dragons are powerful, but people are unpredictable, and giving enormous power to individuals you barely know is always risky. Some advisors warn Rhaenyra about this. Others celebrate the growing strength of their forces. Nobody knows which side is correct. Not yet. As the season moves towards its conclusion, both factions prepare for even larger battles. The Blacks now possess more dragon riders than before. The Greens still possess Vhagar, the most terrifying weapon in the world. Aemond grows more dangerous, Rhaenyra grows more determined, and Daemon slowly emerges from Harrenhal as a changed man. Neither side has won, neither side has lost. The true nightmare is only beginning. The season ends with armies gathering across Westeros, dragons preparing for war, and countless people unknowingly standing in the path of destruction. The Dance of the Dragons is far from over, and when Season 3 begins, the bloodiest chapters of the war are still ahead. Because before this story ends, kings will fall, queens will fall, dragons will die, and House Targaryen will pay a terrible price for turning against itself. To be continued, Season 3.